Hi everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. So lately, I've been seeing more and more people, also on social media, talk about this idea of having standards and not accepting or glorifying the bare minimum when it comes to what we allow in our lives. And I think it's really solid advice and a really interesting topic. But at the same time, I think it can all be a little bit more complicated than that. And so today I wanted to talk about all of that. And I'm really excited for this episode. I think it's going to be a fun one. But before we get into the conversation, if you enjoy my content, please feel free to like the video, comment down below, make sure that you are subscribed if you aren't already. And if you are listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, make sure to leave a 5-star review. Thank you so much. And now let's get right into today's conversation. If I could go back to a past version of me in a time machine who was really accepting and glorifying the bare minimum left, right, and center, and we would ask her, do you have standards? And do you know that you deserve much, much more than just the bare minimum? She would say, yes. Yes, of course I know that, because when you're in it, you don't really want to admit to the opposite, I think, like when you're really in it. But now, looking back, I can see that that version of me had absolutely no idea what it meant to not accept or glorify the bare minimum. And I think one of the biggest reasons for that was that I, at that point, was not giving myself more than the bare minimum. I was not treating myself well. And so how could I know that that same treatment from my surroundings was not good if I wasn't doing it any differently? And from what I've seen, that's what a lot of people miss in this equation. And that's also what I missed for the longest time, because that's the harder part. Like, it's pretty easy to walk through life and say, I deserve people in my life who treat me well and who are supportive and committed and loving and all of those things. And because I know I deserve it, that's why I should have it. That's pretty easy. It's much harder to say, well, the people I surround myself with are a reflection of how I feel about myself. And so, am I treating myself in that way? Am I being loving and committed and supportive towards myself? If not, then how can I really expect that from others? When I got to the point where I slowly did start realizing, well, I have been accepting and glorifying the bare minimum, like no stopping it, because eventually I did realize my approach was more like, okay, well, my standard or my bar has obviously been down here, and now I want it to move upwards. That means I guess I just have to retrain my brain to know that up here is actually what I want. And so then I will no longer accept anything that doesn't match that. I won't find myself in situations where I'm doing that again and again, because my brain will know, hey, that's not what you want. Trying to make that happen, I would do all of the meditations and all of the vision boards and all of the daydreaming about what my life would look like once that would change. And I would watch all of the YouTube videos about knowing your standards and not settling, thinking that that would make that happen, but somehow nothing changed. Like, I kept finding myself in situations where I was accepting and glorifying what I felt was the bare minimum or even less or nothing close to what I wanted. And I would often only realize once it was already too late. And the reason for that was because I hadn't changed. Like, what I felt I deserved deep down still hadn't changed. Also, I think we often have this idea that someone is going to come around in our lives and finally show us that everything that we've wanted all along is possible, whether that is a friendship, a relationship, or whatever else. Like, someone will come into our lives and finally hit that bar of our standards and what we think we deserve, and that will make us see that we deserved it all along. But that's a really dangerous road. Like, you don't want anyone to have that kind of an unhealthy power over you, where if they ever change their mind, you go back to thinking that you deserve nothing because it's so correlated to them. And so it's more about loving and supporting yourself so much that you start to get used to that energy so much that you start to know that's what you deserve. And then someone can come into your life and match that, but it's not because they are showing you what you deserve. It's because they are a match to what you already know you deserve, and you will continue to know that regardless of what happens in your life. In my experience, one phase that is really difficult to handle is when you are becoming aware that whatever you have been accepting and entertaining is no longer working for you. And so you see that and you want that to change, but you're also still figuring out how to really make that happen in your life and what that means and how to become someone who can embody those realizations. And so you're in this weird in-between phase where you are now no longer just obliviously accepting things and realizing once it's way too late, so you see it now, but also things haven't changed entirely yet, or you haven't changed in the way that you want them to. And I think that's a really difficult phase, because now the moments and the experiences that you have that don't match up to what you have realized you actually want become much louder and much more irritating, even if they have been there all the time, because now you can see them. Now you are aware. And so they are just so much louder and so much more irritating. In my experience, when you're in that stage, it's really easy to fall into this habit where you start talking about your standards and verbalizing your standards more than you would like to, because it feels like nobody is hearing you. And so you keep saying it and you keep expressing it thinking that's going to make people hear. But that's a really slippery slope, because you really don't want to become someone who is continuously having to say, hey, this is not what I'm accepting. Hey, you're bringing the bare minimum to the table. I don't want that. Hey, you should know that I deserve more. That's really, it's not a cute vibe. This might sound a little bit harsh, but in my experience, there will be those people who will love the version of you who didn't have any standards and was accepting the bare minimum because they just love that version of you. That's a great one for them. And then there will be those people who will love and accept you for the version of you who does have standards and does not accept the bare minimum because they don't even want to be around that. There will be those people, but on either side, nobody really wants to be around someone who is just continuously complaining about what they are experiencing all the time, but still somehow perpetuating those situations because they haven't figured out yet how to not do that. I know that sounds harsh, but someone gave me that feedback once when I was kind of falling into a complacent mindset about what I was still experiencing. I really appreciated that feedback, and it really stuck with me because I saw the truth in that. And the interesting part is, I think the more we start to work on our own self-worth and what we know we deserve, the more we will have less and less situations and people in our life where we will have to teach people how to treat us, because you become so solid within yourself and your own standards and what you know you deserve, because you are showing up for yourself in that way that you almost become your standards. Like, your standards become so solid within you, they become your energy field. You are just emitting that. And so then people who are a mismatch to that actually stop approaching you and stop even trying to test you with that, because by you just being you, they can already feel that that's not going to work. And so they will be uninterested or walk away without you even having to say anything in the first place. I was talking about this with my friend recently, and she was telling me how she had exactly the same experience that I was having, but in a different way. So basically her take was, she had been using a dating app for a while, and there was one phase where she was using it where she just had a lot of things that had happened in her life that were difficult, and those things really hit her self-worth. And so during that phase, she didn't really manage to show up very well for herself as well. She was not treating herself very well. Based on being in that, she got herself in a lot of situations that felt the same, where people were not treating where people were not treating her well. It ended up becoming a really icky situation because she had a lot of moments where she felt like she had to tell people, hey, this is not what I want. Hey, you're bringing the bare minimum to the table. Don't you dare do that. Don't you know that I have standards? It was very irritating for her all the time, because whenever people would show up that way, it was for her a reflection of also how she was showing up for herself, which just made the whole thing even more irritating. Then she had a different phase where she was using that same dating app, same location, same everything. But during that time, she was feeling really good and she was showing up for herself very well. And that doesn't mean her life was perfect, but she had just really worked on showing up for herself more and giving herself more of the love and the support that she needed. During that phase, she had a lot of moments where she would message with people or maybe meet people also sometimes, or just like converse with people. Out of nowhere, those people would just unmatch her or delete her or never reach out again without anything really happening. And those people were always people that were not on that same wavelength of what she wanted, but she was just more chill about it. And so those people would actually like delete her, unmatch her, not reach out anymore, because what we had figured out is she had become so solid in her own standards that they had become an embodiment within herself. And so just the way she spoke, the way she felt about herself, the way she moved through the world, the way she was by being herself, those standards had become her. And so people who were not on that same wavelength could feel that, maybe without even realizing, and they just became uninterested in her without her even really ever having to say anything. I've had a lot of experiences that have shown me the same, and I think the more you practice it, the more you see how real this is, and the more it almost becomes funny. Like, it's almost funny to watch when people just suddenly disappear out of nowhere and they're just suddenly gone, and you're like, well, I didn't even do anything other than be myself, but I guess it worked. It's quite funny, but of course it's still life. Like, things are not so black and white, and so it's a matter of probability, and it's still being a journey. Of course, we will continue to have moments where we have experiences with people that continue to make us grow and show us where we need to work on ourselves. And we will also continue to have moments with people, regardless of how much we know what we deserve, that don't feel that way and that feel like a complete mismatch, because when you're out in the world, it's just, again, a matter of probability. Those things will happen, but then you handle it very differently. Like, if you are so full with showing up for yourself and enjoying the moments with the people in your life that are a reflection of that, then when people come at you with the bare minimum or something that's not working for you, or they suddenly bring that to the table out of nowhere, it's more like, I'm sorry, no. Like, that's not gonna work. Don't bring that into my vicinity. Please take that somewhere else. I do not wish to be a part of that. Thank you very much. But that's a different approach to, how dare you come at me with that? That is not my standard. And then you tell everyone about what that person dared to do, and it's just its own icky cycle. Those are two very, very different things. That's someone that people want to be around with. When you are so full with showing up for yourself and figuring out what that means, even if it's still a work in progress, that you really have no time to be complaining about people who are not on that same wavelength, because that's just such an icky energy to be in for other people and also for yourself, because that way you are just continuously proving to yourself that what you want doesn't even exist, rather than continuing to work towards what you want internally, so that then that can come into your life. All right, everyone, that is all I wanted to share for today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'm very much looking forward to connecting with you in my next episode.